You've been asking, and we found a global expert in communication, both verbal and non-verbal messaging. Christopher Carter will simply amaze you with super practical ideas on what to say and how to say it. This is a must listen for anyone who works with people. You are simply going to love this episode.
Welcome to the Fitness Business Podcast with your host, Justin Tamsett. With over 30 years in the fitness industry, JT is a globally recognised authority with a mission to lower healthcare costs worldwide by getting more people moving and moving more often in quality facilities with qualified professionals. Every episode, JT digs deep with our guests to bring you insights that will help you lead, innovate, and boost your bottom line. So let's dive in. Take it away, JT.
Welcome to Season 4, and we're listening to you. You wanted the wise words to be in one episode and not spread across multiple. You wanted us to get into the main interview faster, and you wanted to try our FBP Insiders program before you have to join. In Season 4, you'll enjoy all 4 of these requests plus one bonus. In Season 4, you can trial our FBP Insiders program for 7 days, 100% free of charge. You can see all the cool stuff we have, and you'll get the next episode 7 days before anyone else with no ads. You'll love it. Go to patreon.com/fitness business podcast, or there's a link on our website, fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. This is especially cool as you can see the replay of all of our live events, all of our webinars, including our latest, Is Group Fitness Dying with Nick Herold. Now, it's time for Season 4 giveaway. You have a chance this season to win a $100 Amazon gift voucher to grow your professional library just by listening to every episode. Here's how it works. After the main interview, I'll drop a secret code word. Once you hear it, head over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/code word. Pop in the code word and tell us in 30 words or less why you love the podcast. We'll be choosing the winner based on creativity and originality, so don't hold back. And one lucky listener, they're going to take home a $100 prize at the end of Season 4. All right, now let's get on to the main interview. All right, well, it's great to have Chris here today. And I have to say, I've been searching for years for an expert in communication, body language, listening, and finding the secret sauce to strengthen the bond between our members and our team. So how important is human connection in building relationships in our business?
Well, the short answer to that is, Justin, it's all important. Think about what's going to bring a person into your business. It's going to be your marketing. It's going to be your social proof. But what's going to keep them at your place of business? It really has everything to do with the connections that you build with them. Do they feel heard? Do they feel understood? Do they feel like they're getting value, but not just on the tangible level? Are they making progress in their fitness activities, let's say, but do they feel like they're being valued as a person? And interpersonal communication is what keeps people coming back.
Can I ask you then, are there any key components to human connection?
Yeah, there are really 3. The first is curiosity. Just putting yourself in a mindset where you're genuinely interested in the person that you're talking to. That's not easy, by the way, because everything about the way that we engage in media these days is designed to be focusing on ourselves. So we have to flip that script. But then other than that, there are really 2 key things. Every time that we communicate with somebody, we're sending out 2 types of signals, whether they're verbally or whether they're nonverbal. And the signals are connection. These are the signals that tell somebody that we're completely present with them. And the other signal is confidence. These are the signals that tell everybody that we actually know what we're doing. And that puts them at ease and allows them to come along for the ride. So if you can master these 2 types of signals, you have what some people call presence, which is really just your ability to build relationships with somebody quickly.
I like that. Does presence have an impact on trust, or does trust have an impact on presence, or is trust a result of the presence?
Trust is a result of the presence. All trust is built on relationships. And, if you think about this, which is more important, those messages that develop connection or those messages that show your confidence? Well, they're both very important, but most important are those messages that show that you're present with another person and that you're actually interested in them. Because when people feel heard and understood, that's the beginnings of trust. So of these two, connection, it's always the more important.
Has our ability to connect decreased since that thing that was a bit of an itchy cough cold that we had back in 2000?
Right. Absolutely. That actually has had a really significant impact, especially on young people's ability to connect. And so if you have a lot of younger people, these Gen Zs as your employees, you're going to have to spend a lot of extra time showing them the key interpersonal skills of just being with another person and truly listening and taking in what they have to say. So yes, but also on the other side, for the clients who may come into a gym, these are a lot of people who are now apprehensive about close physical contact with people. So that's another one of those little hurdles that you're going to have to spend a little time developing some communication skills to overcome.
You know what? That's a really good point that I've never considered. I always focus solely on trying to improve the communication skills of our staff, but we never actually have considered that the person that's walking into the gym might actually have poor communication skills as well.
Well, and that's really important to consider because we have to accommodate that. It's so easy for us to get frustrated when the messages that we're looking for aren't coming in. So we have to learn to understand how we respond both verbally and physically. You're right. It's a two-way street.
Now, in your presentations, looking at all the stuff that I saw online, doing my research on you, you use humor a lot. Does humor play a place in communication?
My gosh, humor in a presentation is so important because people who are laughing learn better. People who are in a position of fun learn better. So if you want to create an exciting and inclusive and energetic culture within your gym, you're going to want to allow yourself to use a little humor. In particular, though, we have to make sure that we use the right kind of humor because sometimes people's humor can be a little sarcastic or a little cutting. And when it comes to business communication, it's best to let a lot of that go and really focus on, I would call it like the self-deprecating sort of humor. And I sometimes get asked, if you use self-deprecating humor, are you going to reduce how authoritative you look? And I think the answer to that is no. You end up looking human. Yeah, if we allow ourselves to be a little bit vulnerable, that really draws people into us. So if there's any worry about if you make fun of yourself occasionally, are you going to not look like the expert? You can just let that go.
That's great advice. I love that. Part of communication is two-way. One is the message that we're giving, but the other is listening to the message. So can we talk about listening for a couple of minutes and why have many of us become so poor at actually listening?
Well, you made me think just a minute ago when you brought up the whole cough, the pandemic. That was one thing that until we had that brief conversation, I hadn't actually thought about. In my mind, the single most a problematic thing, the worst thing that we face that affects our listening is internet, or to be more specifically, the way we interact on social media. And for two reasons. One of them, of course, is the distractions. We have our devices with us, but the other is our obsession over those distractions. And what are we obsessed over? We're not obsessed over how well other people are doing. We're obsessed over how people perceive us. So we're constantly looking for our lives. That mindset is something that we all have to, and including myself in this, we all have to really work to overcome. We need to begin to see ourselves as servants of other people if we want to really listen to them. In other words, we need to begin to prioritize their agenda over our own. And don't get me wrong, Justin, we all have agendas. I mean, we need to make sales. We want people to come on. But when it comes to actively listening, we really need a set of specific rituals or practices to take us out of that outside headspace and put us in the moment with the other person. So if you ask what the biggest problem is, it's internet.
You can't do that.
I can't do that. Why not?
You can't tell us that we have to do some rituals without telling us what some of those rituals might be.
I was headed there anyway, and I'm glad you asked. First of all, let me frame this in a way that might hit home. I go to the gym, and when I go to the gym, I make sure I go through a warm-up. I have my yoga process that I go through and a lot of functional movement things before I really start to lift. And, I'm going on 60 years old. I'm not a heavy lifter, but I do work out very regularly. What happens when I skip that warm-up? Well, for one thing, my body's not ready, but the other thing is my mind is not ready. I'm not fully present. So I was doing a show, not a presentation or a keynote, but a show of my whole, mentalism, mind reading thing. And I got off stage, and I'm used to people flooding up to me after a show, and they're going to talk about how amazing this was. So in other words, my ego's ready to be fed. I'm ready to go out and be the coolest man in the room. And nobody's coming up to talk to me. They're all around one person who's in the audience. And this person is somebody who's going to be giving a keynote speech the next day, a big motivational speech. So what is this person talking about? He's talking about an amazing trip that he had been on, and everybody is rapt. They're listening to it. And all of a sudden, my brain is going to that even better trip that I'm about to talk about. Here's my problem. That person was an astronaut. That person was Buzz Aldrin, and the story he was talking about was how he had gone to the moon. So if I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to outstage that, then, that just shows you how natural this tendency is. We're listening to somebody, we've got our agendas, and we put them forward. So here's my three biggest tips. One is a body language tip, and I call it mirroring. And it's something that a lot of people will have heard. When you sit down with somebody, just very loosely, very indirectly, kind of copy or adopt a similar body language, a similar posture. Now, there's a lot of people who will coach you that you need to continue to move with them, but I think that's a terrible idea. In my experience working with sales professionals and working with leaders, that is the best way to be completely fake, to be completely inauthentic, because what's happening at that point is you're focusing on yourself. No, this mirroring is to put you in the moment and say, I am now going to start to focus on that individual. Another one that I really like, I call the cone of silence. Now, I'm going to date myself here. When I was a kid, back in the 1970s, there was a TV show called Get Smart, and it was stupid, dumb comedy. You're smiling a little bit, so maybe you've heard of it or seen this.
Yeah. Oh, Max and 99.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, I remember Agent 99 real well. And Maxwell Smart sits down with his bureau chief. They're going to keep their conversation secret from any spies. And he asks for the cone of silence to come. And everybody goes, oh, God, no, not the cone of silence. The cone of silence descends, and now you can't hear anything because there's this horrible echo. My cone of silence doesn't have that problem because my cone of silence is simply an imagination exercise. Sit down with somebody and imagine an energy field that rolls between the two of you and encompasses or envelops both of you that shuts out everything else. Now, you won't literally shut out everything else, but it's a reminder to you to be present and start listening. That's the real key, just to take some practice that takes you out of where you were and into where you need to be.
I love that. I got to confess something to you, Chris. When I used to walk the gym floor and I was going up to talk to a member on the floor to see how they were doing, or I was about to do a sales presentation or something like that, I remember reading something back in the 90s that if you changed your physiology, then that actually helped you become present as well. So I used to clench my fist and just by my side, no one would notice, and I would just hit my side with my clenched fist. And that was like the physical trigger to be present.
That is an excellent example of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about pacifiers. And pacifiers are gestures that we use to calm ourselves down when we're really tense. The problem with pacifiers is that once we start to show them, and you know what some of these are. Maybe you're tapping your fingers on a table, or maybe, you're biting at your fingernails. Once we start to show these pacifiers, it's telling the person we're communicating with that we're not really with them. We're engrossed in our own anxieties. So to get rid of pacifiers, I do something that's a little similar to what you just described. I put my finger and my thumb together, just hold it at my side. And when I feel that tension coming on, and I know it's coming on because I'm starting to show these pacifiers, I let it go into that little space right between my finger and thumb. And then I let it go. And it's amazing how that centers me and brings me back to the moment with the other person.
Is that what we should do if we might have a Karen member? I feel sorry for all the people who are
Absolutely.
called Karen now, but
Yeah, we call her Karen. Look, I don't care what business you're in. There will come a point in which you meet an angry and disgruntled, whatever you want to call it, or simply ass. We're going to meet them, and they're going to be, some of them, our customers. We need to make sure that rather than focusing on their angry energy, we allow ourselves to remain calm. And one of the best ways to do that is to become aware of your own pacifiers. because we all have them. And by the way, if you don't know what yours are, ask your friends, ask your colleagues. These are people who deal with you day in and day out, and they're going to share with you if you ask them, oh, you often try to untuck your shirt. My wife told me this about myself. I had no idea. Because your pacifiers, not only do they show that you're getting your energy up, that you're getting upset, but more important, they're a barometer for it. They tell you when it starts to happen. There's a psychologist named David Matsumoto who is probably the premier researcher on body language. And he has a quote that I love. He says, "We don't have emotions. Emotions have us." So in other words, once we begin to feel this cascade of high intensity emotions, it's really easy for it to get out of control. And all of a sudden, rather than thinking, we're emoting. And how we're going to emote when somebody's angry with us? Well, we're pretty much going to give back as good as we get. That is deadly when dealing with that sort of person, because you need to be calm. The person who gets angry first loses. So become aware of your own body language. There's a couple of other things that I think are really important when it comes to body language and that Karen member. One is never try to match their energy level. Stay calm. Breathe deep. The other is this. It's helpful if, rather than facing them straight on, you angle yourself just a little bit, take a back foot and come back so that you're not directly on. Because when we're confident and we're really connecting with people, we always want to be straight on. This is called fronting, and it shows us at our most confident. Stepping back just a little bit allows us to recede in their presence, because once that person is angry, this straight on becomes a confrontation with them. Imagine two gorillas in the wild facing off. So we don't want to do that at that point. So we step back, give them a little physical space and angle away. And then the other has to do with eye contact. I'm going to make you, Justin, self-conscious for the rest of your life. Pay attention when you look at somebody's eyes as to where you're looking when you look in their eyes. Because first of all, we rarely focus and zero in for any length of time. We really scan the person's face, looking generally at the eyes. And we look at it in two areas. About 60% of us will look from the eyes to the chin and up, and about 40% from the eyes and down. Now, each one of these creates a really different impression in the person you're talking to. So if you're looking in this upper zone, you're going to come across as somebody who's really dominant. And in this environment, that is going to invite a confrontation. If you look in this lower zone, you're going to come across as somebody who's warm and empathetic. So make sure you're looking at the lower zone. And then with this Karen member, listen, let them get it out. So listen without much response, except that kind of feedback that shows you're there with them. So give the nods, give the ahas, and then when you do respond, apologize once and only once. Research shows that if you continue to apologize for a problem, that you're focusing on the problem and not the solution. We apologize once because we want to acknowledge the way they feel. Now, maybe if we've made an actual mistake, and this is kind of what I'm assuming is we've made some actual mistake. We apologize once, and then we work together for a solution. But never apologize again. You've done it once, that's enough.
It's a great tip. I did a training course at the Ritz-Carlton, and I remember when they were talking about apologies, they used the phrase, "Please accept my apologies."
A nice formal way of
Yeah, they said like 8 out of 10 people would say, no, I just wanted you to say that you were sorry.
I would say at the Ritz-Carlton, they know a little bit about customer service. So whatever that training is, they're pretty good at that. I think that's an excellent approach. You're apologizing typically on behalf of the problem. In other words, you're saying, I'm here, I acknowledge you. Once you've acknowledged it, if you continue to apologize, you end up looking like you're groveling. And you're also really focusing on what you shouldn't be focusing on, which is the problem, as opposed to the solution. What is great about Karen members, and it's going to sound really weird to say what is great, is if we can actually make them feel heard, they become our best allies. It's a gift to have somebody give you feedback. You might not like the way that they give you feedback, but it's a gift to give feedback. And so if we make them feel heard and understood, they become much more loyal, and it's often that we can win that person over.
Most of us have in our gyms a front desk, and Karen will come to the desk to have that conversation. Would I be right in saying that Not only you turn on that angle, ideally you actually come out from behind that desk so there's not that barrier between you and Karen.
Yes, absolutely. Because anything that would create a physical barrier is going to make it look like you're hiding or, trying to keep protected from them or their problem. There's a certain kind of confidence that is really important when we're dealing with any high intensity, high energy individual. And I call it calm confidence. It's the confidence that shows that you're not bothered by them, because a lot of times we can move into more of a dominance mode where we're trying to control them. That's not going to work in this environment. It's that calm confidence that shows that we're not bothered by them, we're not hurt by them, we're not afraid of them. And so any kind of barrier that we put in the way, whether it's the desk itself, the counter, or physical barriers like our own. You've often heard the idea that if a person's arms are folded, it means they're resistant to what you have to say. That's not literally true. It has a lot of other meanings. But when somebody is coming at you with that level of energy, this shows that you're afraid. It shows that you don't want to deal with them. And so allow it to open up.
Unbelievable. This body language thing is quite fascinating. Can I ask you, in a real scenario, how important is body language then in helping put a prospect or a new member at ease when they come into the gym, perhaps for the first time?
I think it's really all important. I mean, consider this. Research used to say that a first impression took 30 seconds to create. And then they did a lot more research and they shortened it to 7 seconds and then to 2 seconds. The latest research shows that a first impression has begun to be created literally that fast, a 20th of a second. So within about a 20th of a second, the person is deciding on two primary things. Number one, does this person who they're communicating with actually care about me? And number two, do they really know what they're doing? You remember I told you earlier that we have two types of signals of connection and signals of confidence. That's what people are looking for, because deep in this primitive part of their brain, they're trying to decide friend or foe. Is this person going to reward me, or are they going to be threatening to me? So a lot of times when we greet people, we unconsciously begin to go into a greeting with kind of a jockeying for power. And I think people who have a really strong physical presence frequently do this. Sometimes it can be part of a lot of athletic cultures without knowing that they're doing this. So it's important to realize. Now, I consider three things are part of that making a person feel at ease. The first is the eye contact, because that literally is the first thing that happens. So we want to train our staff to make direct eye contact in the lower zone most of the time. Second is something that we forget about a lot, and it's a smile. A genuine, warm smile does so much to make a person feel comfortable and feel welcome. And so we have to begin to understand the difference between a fake smile and a real smile, and it's the eyes. We've seen people who say, "Oh, I am so happy to meet you," and they've got this just totally lateral smile, and you know instantly they're not happy to meet you. Why? Because the eyes don't get involved. When we're really happy to see somebody, we let the whole face show it, and you get these little crinkles in the eyes. Not everybody has the same level of emotional expression. Some people are more stoic than others. I'm not asking anybody to be fake, but I'm asking you to allow yourself to let your face show it. A lot of times we'll shake a person's hand. Gym rituals and the way that you train your staff might be a little bit different, but I'm going to talk about the handshake just so that we can talk about this jockeying for power. If you reach out and you grab a person's hand and you start to shake their hands, you're going to find that most of the time it's in one of three possible positions. Either your hand will be palm down, your hand will be palm up, or your hands are going to be perpendicular to the ground. So if you find that you're the type of person who tends to turn your hand palm down, you need to realize that without knowing it or without intending it, you're coming across as somebody who's controlling, who's enforcing dominance. And if you have a tendency to turn your hand palm up, you have a tendency to come across as somebody who's going to let other people walk over you. That's a sort of this subtle unconscious signal. Now, I don't want to overplay this. I'm using it as an example. But if your hands are perpendicular to the ground, what you're really saying is you and I are partners. Now, you can spend a lot of time talking about the very specific types of body language, but I want to kind of step aside from that and talk about where our brains are, because our body language many times is simply a reflection of what we're thinking and feeling. If you decide in an interaction how you want that person to feel, an awful lot of this body language is going to come along for the ride naturally. So how do you want that person to feel? If I say, I want that person to feel welcomed and I want them to feel like they're a partner, you're going to find that you do things physically and with your words that reinforce these. So those three things, eye contact, a smile, a partnership type of greeting, those are specific things you can adopt, but never forget where your head is. Decide in every interaction, what do I want this person to feel? Because it will play out for you.
Is handshaking still a cool thing to do, or is it?
Well, that's why I said it may not work in a specific environment. A lot of people will fist bump, and that's great because that makes a physical contact. I always use as my watch to let the other person begin to initiate. And if they initiate a handshake, then that's what I do. But in most business environments now, I'm not initiating them. I'm using that, though, as an example, just because we want to keep aware of whether we're trying to show dominance over a person or whether we're really trying to show that we're connecting with them and that they're equals with us.
When you talked about the fake smile, I'm curious, does the brain pick up that you're fake smiling to me, Chris? And I'm like, now I'm totally confused. My subconscious is like, is he a friend or foe? Because it's not a real smile.
It's exactly right. Mixed messages cause a person to begin to wonder, friend or foe. And the fake smile is a really good example of that. So little babies, once they get to the part where they can recognize faces, recognize a genuine smile almost immediately, and they react to it. I mean, a little baby will see a smile and they'll start giggling. But if they see a fake smile, most of the time, they won't do anything. They will not react at all. Now, this tells us something really important about how our human brain is designed to react to people, and especially to facial expressions. So without knowing it, we're unconsciously going, oh, that person is actually warm. They like me. But if we see that fake smile, you're exactly right. This doubt creeps in. And that's what really ruins a real connection, honestly, is anything that's a mixed message that makes it look like you're trying to pretend your reaction.
And of course, you're never going to make a sale if that's what's running through the prospect's head.
Exactly. Right. Because no sale without trust.
No, exactly right. So we've talked about the body language, we've talked about listening. What about the message that actually comes out of our mouths? There used to be, and I think my parents used to say it, and I'm sure I've said it to my daughter, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Is it still relevant?
It is relevant to agree. Your body language needs to reinforce the words. But when it comes to relationship building, the words, what we really need to focus on are more inclusive, team-oriented words. We're going to accomplish this. These are our goals, as opposed to these are your goals.
That's fascinating. Does that just makes that connection feel stronger?
Right, because we want to be partners in, especially if we're helping coach people to greater progress in their workouts, we want to be partners in that process. So here's what we're going to work on. The next session is much more powerful than here's what you need to work on. Having said that, everybody's motivated a little differently. If you have somebody who is driven, I want you to hurt me at this workout. Well, you're not there, but they're probably telling you at that point, no, I want you to hold me accountable, and you can change your language. So listening to the language that people give you is part of this. And a lot of times if a person is a little insecure, unsure, they're going to give you the kind of language that shows that. And so if somebody's insecure, you want to be a partner in their progress. You don't want to be a stern taskmaster.
Does that team language roll over into how we write our emails or our text messages?
Yeah, I think it does. You know, the biggest problem with emails and text messages is there's no emotional content to them, and it's really easy to get off on the wrong track. In fact, I had this happen to me recently. I'm the president of my chapter of the National Speakers Association, and one of the people on my board, she asked if she could do a particular task on our website, and I was thrilled that she did it. And I said, go for it. That's literally what I emailed her back. Go for it. And I didn't realize that I had neglected the emotional content of the message, that she wanted somebody to go, attaboy, way to go. Really, I'm so excited that you're showing this initiative. Now, I was lucky. She gave me the feedback. She said, Chris, this is what I need from you. Most of the time, we don't get that kind of feedback. So here's the lesson I took from that. And it's a lesson that I realize I don't apply often enough. And that is that whenever we're communicating with anybody, whether it's in person or whether it's through these indirect means of communication, there's always two levels of communication. There's the tangible thing that they want from us, and then there's that emotional thing. We're never going to hurt ourselves by giving that kind of encouragement and feedback. I mean, seriously, who's going to say, you're just too encouraging? That's not going to happen. So it's important to remember that there's an emotional component that's getting lost in these emails, and it's helpful to add that back in.
Stop it, Chris. You're too encouraging. Please.
Well, a lot of cultures are not touchy-feely, but you don't have to be too touchy-feely. It's simply acknowledging the person. Hey, I'm so glad you asked me that, or that's terrific. I'm so glad you're working on it. You don't have to make it long and drawn out if that's not who you are. But acknowledging that emotional component is really going to help.
You have dropped some absolute nuggets during this interview. I'm so impressed and so grateful we've had you on. Can I ask you, are there 5 phrases that you think we should be using in order to put members at ease? Or 3 phrases or 1 phrase? Because you've just dropped a couple of different phrases during different scenarios, and I'm wondering if there's any of your favorite go-tos.
Well, Justin, I don't have a list of phrases, but I will tell you the one to start with, their name. We don't use a person's name often enough. That is like communication 101, but a lot of times it's helpful to be reminded of things that we know intellectually, but we don't apply. The second is not a phrase, but a way of reacting to a person. So somebody's talking and you listen. Your feedback really matters. Those nods, those ahas. But there's another level of feedback, and this is like my PhD level secret. So I'm excited to share this. It's called emotional upgrades. So let's say, Justin, that you're talking to me about an experience that you had. Maybe it's an experience with a group class that you were part of. There's going to be an emotional component to it. I really liked this. I really hated that, or I wasn't that fond. So you're hearing that emotional component. How are you going to respond to it to get them to open up to you? Well, we have 3 ways we can respond to it. 1, sometimes we habitually downgrade it. So a downgrade would be you say, I don't think I was fond of the way that he got into the class. You go, well, that's too bad. Now, once you've said that, you've just dismissed that person's concern because you've downgraded it. You've said to them, that's not so important. We can match it. Well, that's something you weren't fond of. Can you tell me more about it? Or we can upgrade it. Really, that bothered you a lot. Tell me more about it. Now, what's going to happen? They're going to feel validated, and they're going to feel it's now open season to actually give feedback. Because most of the time when people give us feedback, they're not telling us what they really feel. They're really concerned about how we're going to respond to it. So you can downgrade, match, or upgrade. And when you get in the habit of upgrading, when you respond to a person and they describe their feelings, what you're going to discover is that suddenly you just get this flood of information, and they really will share with you their goals, their fears, their anxieties. And these are the things you need to know to build successful relationships.
One of the really practical things that happens in gyms is we have to tell people the price. Whether it's a membership or whether it's a personal trainer trying to sell something, a massage therapist, a tennis pro, we're always trying to sell something with a price. Can I get any advice for our FBP community on language or listening or body language when we're about to either go into telling a price or after we tell a price, what we should be doing?
Well, let's break this down into 3 sections then. Let's talk about the going into it, and then the actual price delivery, and then what to do afterwards. Now, I'm not going to talk at this point about going into it like the instant you're about to present that price. Instead, I want to talk about where your headspace is when it comes to giving the price. In other words, let's say minutes before. Here's the problem. When a lot of times we toss out a price, some of us, myself included, get this little level of anxiety and self-doubt. Are we really worth that? And so we want to be in a headspace where we know that this price is going to deliver value. And there's a couple of ways that we can do it. First of all, repeating a mantra to yourself, I'm worth it, I'm worth it, I'm worth it, is not going to do you any good at all. That's not going to change the way that you really feel. But if you, in your mind, play through the results that you deliver, if you play through your successful sales in the past, you're going to realize you've done this before, that you really are worth it. Spend a minute or two, if you have the opportunity, simply practicing that mental space. The reason I'm suggesting that is because, as you've heard me mention, our body language often is a reflection of our emotions. And so if you are at that, that mental space where you just doubt yourself, it will unconsciously show up in your body language. Now, the other thing that I really like is this tool. I call it Salt, Pepper, $10,000. And this was taught to me by a business coach, but it is the best way to get used to delivering a price confidently neutral. So $10,000, I'm just tossing that out. That's a high price for something. Whatever your high price is, sit at your table. That's salt. That's pepper. My fee is $10,000. That's salt. That's pepper. My fee is $10,000. Obviously, that salt is in front of you. You're acknowledging its existence. That pepper is in front of you. You're acknowledging its existence. My fee is, you get used to and develop a cadence to simply acknowledge its existence. It's not something you have to apologize for. It is what exists. And when you get to that point, then you can deliver that price verbally without any kind of flinch. Actually worked for me earlier today, sealed the deal. I really think largely because of that. So that's getting into the right headspace. And if you're in any kind of sales, maybe you don't have that opportunity to get into that headspace right away, but practice it. We have to practice where our brains are, because otherwise we aren't going to get the results we want. But then in the moment, we deliver a price fronting somebody. We want to deliver it open body language. We want to deliver it looking in the lower zone, because we're partners with a person. We're not imposing a price on them. We're partners with them. And then comfortably, naturally, casually. Now let's talk about the after the price delivery. What do? We shut up. We wait. Person has to think it over. Now, what's great about a pause is they want to fill it. Imagine you're in any conversation and there's this pause, there's this natural tendency to fill it. Well, if you've built that trust and that loyalty, then most likely what they're going to fill it with is yes. Now, obviously, you have to ask for the sale, but give them time. Always have to ask for the sale. So if you're talking about language, that's the thing that salespeople, I think, neglect more often than not. Are you ready to sign? But deliver the price, give them time to respond, and then close the sale.
Now, you mentioned a little bit there about practicing. So I love all of those 3 tips. In fact, I've loved everything you've spoken about, Chris. Talk to me about training, because obviously we could bring you in and you could train our teams. Or what could we do on a regular basis to improve our communication skills?
Okay. Well, the first rule of practicing is one step at a time. You know, you're not going to go from a 150-pound bench to a 300-pound bench overnight. You're going to build into it. Now, I'm going to share with you what I call the big 4. Justin, and these are 4 really powerful body language tools, and they're powerful because they are easy to spot. You won't miss these. Every time you look at somebody, in fact, the moment I share them, I guarantee every time you look at somebody, you're going to see one or more of these things, and they're going to tell you a lot about how that person is feeling at the moment. But here's the other reason. You can use these, and these are movements or body language styles that you can use to shape how other people relate to you. Now, it's going to take me about 2 minutes, but this is your crash course. This is going to turn you into as close to a body language expert as I can get you in about 2 minutes. Are you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
Okay. POPO, P-O-P-O, stands for proximity, orientation, pacifiers, and open body language. Now, the reason that these 4 body language cues are so important is because they emerge from the limbic system of the brain. They're part of our freeze, fight, or flight response. So they're almost impossible to hide. Proximity. When people are activating the reward centers of our brain, we tend to get closer to them. When we find them threatening, we tend to pull away. So you've seen this in any conversation. You start a conversation. You know you've hit the sweet spot when you see that little lean in. That's really important. The reason it's important is so that it tells you when you have connected with them, and when they feel rewarded or important. It's also important because you can use it yourself. Let's say you're having a conversation with somebody. Maybe you want to get the sense of how they feel about their progress. They've started to talk about how they feel. If you were sitting nice, straight, upright, and then you leaned in just a little bit, you have sent off the most powerful bonding signal you can come up with. Hey, I'm fully present. This matters to me. Okay, orientation. When our face and our torso are aligned, most of the time we can tell where a person's focus or attention is. But when they're separate, most of the time their attention, their true attention, is not where their face is focusing, but where their torso or lower part of their body is focusing. So how do you know when somebody's distracted? Typically because of this lack of orientation between the face and the torso. You're given a group class. Somebody's a newbie. They feel a little nervous. You could turn your head to give the instructions, or you could literally angle your whole body to them and give instructions. Turning your head to give them instructions says, you're important, but you're not as important as everything else. Being in alignment says, I'm really interested in what you have to say. In other words, we make people feel included when we completely front, face and torso aligned. All right, pacifiers we've talked about. These are the ways that we calm ourselves down. Really, it's an issue of knowing what your pacifiers are, because once you begin to become aware of them, awareness is what allows you to bring them back down. The reason that knowing our pacifiers are so important is because when somebody senses that we're nervous, a thing called the personalization bias kicks in. They don't say, gosh, how can I help this person be less nervous? They go, why are they bothered by me? So we know what our pacifiers are. We know that our energy level and our tension and our anxiety is shooting up. We breathe into it and we just let it go. And finally, open body language. I know we discussed it earlier. Somebody says an arms folded, it means they're resistant to what you have to say. It's not actually true. Most of the times, arms folded is a pacifier. They're just more comfortable that way. But remember this personalization bias. This really gets in the way of people connecting with us. They perceive it as disconnect or resistance. So we open up. That's it. Proximity, orientation, pacifiers, open body language. So you were asking about training. Choose one. Just one of those. Practice it for a few minutes each day for a week. Practice it. Let's say you start a morning with a 5-minute review session and practicing and actually going through the physical motions. You're going to find yourself using it throughout the day. In other words, it's going to stay in that conscious awareness. Over the course of a week, it's going to move from that conscious awareness, or really self-conscious, where you're going, gosh, it feels weird. By the end of the week, it's not going to be weird. It's going to be normal. You're noticing it and you use it all the time. And then do orientation and then do open body language. Go through the 4 POPOs that way. One a day. But let's talk about your staff, because I think this is the most important part. The most effective tool for training in communication is improvisational role playing. It's the most powerful tool at all. So you, in the role of trainer, want to play the role of the person who's being communicated with. Play the role of that anxious person coming in. Now, I've just given you this tool set, POPO. That's going to give you something to look for. You can correct these one at a time. But the other thing is work with the person that you're training to say, okay, here's the scenario. I'm anxious. I'm uncomfortable. You're going to role play how you respond to me. What emotional response do you want from me? Focus. Make sure you have that. Because as a trainer, you're going to be judging whether their actions are congruent with that. An awful lot of body language is actually intuitive. We understand what these look like. Now, I've taught you how to formalize this. You know exactly what to look for, but understand a lot of this is intuitive. If you know the results that you want, you can see that it's, have you noticed, you might say to your trainee that your voice is going up at the end of that price quote? That's called uptalk. If you've heard somebody, rather than them stating that it goes into a question, they probably haven't noticed it, but you now know, looking at them, that they need to look this way. So you don't have to be a PhD in psychology or an expert in body language to begin this process. What you have to do is know what you want the emotional connection to look like, and then just go through the roles with them and give them an opportunity to grow and develop.
I think that's great advice. So my last question for you, sir, is if you could write one line in a business plan for 2026 around communication, what would it be?
How long does my line get to be, Justin?
Well, you can have as long a line as you like. It's like fishing. It was started this big and became that big.
Then my line includes 3 clauses. Clause number 1, define your touch points with your clients or your prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, define what you want the client or prospect to feel in that moment. Number 3, train to do it.
Chris is gone. He's just dropped his mic and he's exited stage right. That was great. I love those clear definitions. Chris, if anybody is not thinking about working with you, they're crazy. But if they did want to do some work with you, I'm assuming some of this stuff you could do digitally as well as face to face.
I actually do quite a lot of training virtually these days, and it can be highly effective, really because, some of this stuff has to go through the head before it gets out into the practice of the real world. Well, the first place is to look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Christopher Carter, speaker on LinkedIn. My website is christophercarter.com. Could not be easier to find, christophercarter.com.
We will put all of those contact details in the show notes. Sir, it has been an absolute pleasure.
I love working with people in the fitness industry because so many of people in the fitness industry are entrepreneurs. There are definitely big business interests involved, but so many are entrepreneurs, and I am one too. And so I understand what it is to constantly be looking for that edge in your business. So it's a real thrill for me to be part of this with you because I just feel like I have such a connection with people in the fitness industry.
Thanks, Christopher. This week's code word drops real soon, so make sure you stay after this next segment for your chance to win a $100 Amazon voucher.
Hi, my name is Magnus Nyberg. I'm the president of Eleiko North America. Eleiko has been helping people get stronger since 1957, and today we're proud to support the world's leading gyms, coaches, and athletes. You'll find my contact details in the show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Strength is increasingly viewed as the foundation for better performance in all aspects of life. We're seeing a growing demographic, especially among women and older adults, turning to strength training for longevity, health, and quality of life. It's no longer a trend, it's a shift, and it's here to stay. But as demand rises, gyms are facing a key challenge. How do you deliver more strength options in the same space to meet a wider range of member needs? And that's where Eleiko comes in. Our Prestera system is a modular, customizable system which is safe, intuitive, and inviting that brings together free weights, bodyweight training, cables, and integrated storage, all in one cohesive solution. It gives operators the tools to create efficient, high-performing spaces that adapt to evolving training needs, all while elevating the member experience. At the core are our racks and rigs designed with a lifter-first approach to support commercial gyms, high-performance centers, and premium home setups alike. They're adaptable, durable, and built for performance, ensuring your strength offering grows alongside your business. And with over 6 decades of experience at the highest levels of international sport and professional training environments, we know what great strength spaces require and how to build them. So, if you're rethinking your layout or looking to strengthen your floor plan, we love to help. You'll find my contact details in the show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com.
Thanks, Magnus from Eleiko. And make sure you check out our other trusted suppliers for Rex Roundtables, Wellness Spaces, delivering innovative recovery and wellness experiences. Solutions One, offering member engagement solutions for fitness businesses. The Abs Company, designs and sells innovative fitness equipment. Clubcom, providing gyms digital entertainment, communication, and revenue solutions. Smart Health Clubs, offering customizable fitness software solutions for health clubs. All of these Rex suppliers are in the show notes, so check them out at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. And the code word for this episode is communication. Go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/code word for your chance to win the $100 Amazon gift voucher this season. Drop in the word communication. Next episode, I chat with Lisa Doherty on all things on exercise as medicine. She has a great opportunity for all of our FBP community to attend her online event to educate trainers on training the special needs population. And as I wrap up, we'd be so grateful if you drop a review on whatever platform you're listening to the podcast on. And don't forget to share this episode with anyone you think could benefit from improved communication skills. And you know our sign-off, so you can join me. What we leave behind is not set in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.